Okay, hi everyone. I'm Marguerite Ashton here at Criminal Lines. So thank you for joining me here on this uh, breezy Sunday. So I've been talking to you guys about one of my guests that was going to be on. So he is one of my favorite crime writers. I love reading his books. This is the second time I um, have had the honor to have him on my little podcast here. So I want to welcome Brad Smith to the show once again, and we're going to talk about his awesome book, The Goliath Run. So welcome, Brad.
Thanks for having me. It's my honor to be here.
So I love this book. I love all your books. I may have to say this one might be my favorite. But so
Nice to hear it.
I want for you listeners out there, Brad Smith never disappoints with his book. It keeps you in. It just keeps you. For me, I have not come across the 3 books that I read of his. There's always something to keep you turning the pages. So I want to say here, first of all, I've got to bring it up because the book, no one wanted to touch it in the United States to do an interview. So I want to talk about that. I have to. So what do you think? What happened? Why?
Yeah, I've been publishing with a Arcade in New York. They published my book, Return of Kid Cooper, a couple of years ago, and they published another book I did, Cactus Jack, this year.
Mm-hmm.
And we showed it to them. My agent showed it to everybody. And the book actually starts with a school shooting, which is a difficult subject. I understand I'll tell you, Marguerite, it was difficult to write. It was very difficult to write.
Mm-hmm.
But I was told that they didn't want to publish a book that started with a school shooting or really was about a school shooting. And to me, that's like, you're ignoring something that's happening all the time. I don't know what good it does to ignore it. Mm-hmm. The other complaint I got about the book, to a certain extent, more so, the first was more so the school shooting thing, was that the lead character, or there's 2 protagonists, a guy named Sam Jackson, who's a right-wing talking head on a TV show, and the other protagonist is a farmer named Joe Matheson, a woman. They said that the character of Sam Jackson was too cartoonish. And I responded, after November 2016, isn't it hard to accuse any public figure of being too cartoonish anymore? Mm-hmm. But that was what I heard, and we received all kinds of feedback, and everybody turned it down. And I'm a big believer in serendipity in life. Mm-hmm. And around about 3 years ago, At Bay Press, a small publishing house out of Winnipeg, approached me and asked me to blurb a book by a woman named Janet Troll, who's actually from my hometown, and she's a terrific short story writer. So I read the book, I loved it, blurbed it. Mm-hmm. And when I went to the book launch, as I was leaving, her publisher said to me, Matt Jowdry, he said, I know you're publishing with Arcade out of New York, but if you ever got something you want to show us, feel free to give me a shout. So after I got all these rejections, I was getting pretty disillusioned, because I thought that The Goliath Run was a good book. I just decided one day to give him a shout. I think I emailed him and I said, I have a book here if you want to read it, but do you have distribution in the States? Because it's a very American, very political book. And he says, yeah, we have great distribution in the States. I sent it to him that day, and I think 2 days later, he made me an offer. And that's how it hit the bookshelves. Serendipity.
Wow. So what I do on the podcast, I'm not into discussing politics on the show, but I am, as a writer myself, I believe we should be able to write what it is we want to write. And for you, this book was labeled as too political. Were you concerned about losing any your readership? Was that a concern for you at all?
Yes, to a certain extent, but on the other hand, to thine own self be true.
Mhm.
I couldn't let that stop me from writing the book. And I wrote the book. I know people think that it's got a lot to do with the Trump administration, but I actually wrote the first draft of the book, not only before he was elected, but before he was even announced.
Uh-huh.
And it was based more on some certain right-wing TV personalities, the Sam
Okay.
Jackson. Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
I was just kind of getting frustrated on how partisan it is, not just in your country, but in my country as well. When, one side says black, the other side says white, they just can't agree on anything. And, their job is to help the country out and to help the citizens of the country out. And it just seems to be, to me, more and more and more that that's not happening. Their job just seems to be to thwart the other side, and I don't care if you're on the left or the right. It just seems that everybody wants to stop everybody from doing what they want to do just for the sake that they can stop them. And I think you're going to see that going forward right now,
Yeah. Well,
and it's just so partisan. It's frustrating,
and see, and so again, I'm going to dig deeper again, even though I don't like politics on the show. But as writers, you stated yourself, and so if anybody's wondering, Brad is in Canada. So one of my favorite places to visit. He's written the book, The Goliath Run, and it's very interesting. It was I think to go through a lot of things. I was in Colorado. I lived in Colorado at the time of the Columbine shooting. I was around when I heard the one with the little ones that got hurt. It is a very disheartening. It's sad. It's sad, but like you said, this is the realities in our life, and I think as writers, we ought to be able to express that. But then you get to the point where whether it's politics or whatever, there gets to be some point where things are played in our industry, and you get this, it stops us from trying to create certain things, and somebody doesn't want to publish it. So I'm glad that you were able to come across somebody who was willing to give this book a go because it needed to be written. It is very good. It is something that, for example, not only it's a book written by you, but I was intrigued at the fact, and I said, why isn't anybody in the States wanting to talk about this book? I wanted to know why. So that in itself was like, I've got to read it. I want to know what's going on. So you have your, is this going to be part of a series? Are you going to continue writing with this character?
Not.
Or is this a one and done?
This is a one and done, I think. Yeah, the character of Joe. I know we don't want to give away too much of the story.
Yeah, no spoilers.
But the finale of the book is pretty much a finale. I think in terms to take her somewhere else, it would just seem odd because she did what she did out of this emotional trauma that had gripped her. And to take the character Sam Jackson somewhere, well, again, we're going to get into spoiler territory.
Yeah.
I can't see myself doing that. I can't see myself doing that either. So I think it's a one and done. I just finished a brand new book that actually takes place during the Great Depression. So I'm moving far away from.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. All right.
This next one's about moonshine and stock car racing, so it's more in my blood.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love. Okay. See. Thank you. I can't wait for that one. All right. The fact. So everyone. It was heartbreaking reading this book, but at the same time, it was very gripping for me. Brad was able to write this book and find a balance with his story. You did a phenomenal job with that, Brad. So thank you. You found a balance. It was real. It's what's there. I relate to you on some level because I write procedurals, police procedurals. And there's just so much going on that it's like, well, do I dare write this because of what's going on in the world? But for me, I just decided to take the bull by the horns and I write it, and then it's out there and we'll see what's going on. But you had to sort of fight to get it out there, and you believed in the book because
Yeah,
you,
I really
am I
did.
correct or what?
Yeah, I mean,
You fought for your book.
and that led to my frustration when I got all the rejection slips, you know, because I did believe in the book. I started writing the book out of a sense of frustration over, and like I mentioned, the partisanship.
Yeah.
And I wrote the first draft of this book in 19 days. I just sat down and I started writing. It just kind of flowed. Now I've done a fair amount of work to it since then, obviously, but
Right.
I wrote it from start to finish in 19 days. I think it must have been one of those cold winters periods up here when there's really not much to do. My desk is about 6 feet from a wood stove.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that makes it easier, you know, when the sun's shining and you can be golfing or fishing. I probably wouldn't have done it in 19 days.
I understand that one.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So I'm gonna mention your website a couple times. Where can the readers go to find your website, Brad?
Yeah, I have my website is www.bradsmithbooks.com. And I have an author page on Facebook too. I think if you type in Brad Smith author page, you'll probably get it.
Right. So I will put together what I'm going to do is everybody who listens, I also put this on my Criminal Lines blog. So I will add I will link your website and your author page.
Okay, terrific.
So here we're sitting right now, and all of the political stuff that is going on in the world. How do you feel even more about this book? You said you wrote it out of frustration, and I'm going to show you this beautiful book here. You wrote this out of frustration with everything that has happened now. And yes, we're going to discuss some politics on here just a little bit because this is a celebration to us writers who I believe we should be able to write what it is we want to write. You took the risk and you fought for your book, The Goliath Run. Here we are now with everything that's going on politically, whatever. You having written a book, does it make you feel even stronger and proud that you fought for the book to be out? The realities for everything.
Yes, because it wasn't a situation where it was going to become passe. You know, if I started writing the book several years ago, it would be great if it did become passe. It would be great if all of a sudden the school shootings went away and everybody started getting along really well and everybody started working together.
Right.
But I didn't really see that coming down the road, and we haven't seen it come down the road. So yeah, if anything, things are worse right now. And I'm not just talking about the US. Canada's the same, you know, it's just butting heads all the time. And
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's maybe not quite as bad as what's going on right now with the demonstrations and stuff in the US. Whether it doesn't matter which side you're on, but you know, right. We have a lot of that here going on here too. So yeah, it wasn't like I wrote this book and oh gee whiz, now it's no longer relevant. It's even more relevant than it was 4 or 5 years ago. You know?
That is true.
We did, and the publisher did hold it back for a year. We were going to bring it out last year. We decided because it's the backdrop is an American election. We decided to bring it out in 2020 just for the timing purposes, you know.
Well, I'm glad that we did here. We have the book. I just want to ask. So, when I was reading, so we've got chapter 1, and then we've got chapter 2. And you've got it where it says 1 week earlier. For the setting, did you have that planned in the 19 days that you wrote the book to figure out how this was going to come out? Or was it just really rough and this was figured out later on how you were going to have it set? Was it in your notes? What happened with that?
No, that's a very good question, because I have a great friend who has been my agent, and she's a writer herself now. Her name is Jennifer Barkley.
Mm-hmm.
She lives this idyllic life on an island off of Greece. She's a Brit. She and I are in touch all the time, and I showed her the first draft, and the first draft did not start with the school shooting. I think the school shooting was chapter 3. It was either 2 or 3. And I started with the second chapter, Sam Jackson in his studio and on TV and all that.
Right.
And she said to me, no, you have to start with the school shooting. And I didn't, that never occurred to me. That's why it's always great to have an extra set of eyes on things, especially somebody who you trust and is really talented like Jen. And it really kind of clicked once I realized, yeah, she's right. That's what I got to do. And then I just backtracked a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's how that came about. So yeah, it wasn't in my notes. I don't do notes when I write a first draft. I always say to people, there's no right way or wrong way to write a book. I mean, correct. You can write 1 word a day for 300,000 days or 60,000 days.
I agree.
But I know a lot of people that do some really complex outlining, Bristol board on the walls and stuff like that. And they know exactly where it's going to go. But every book that I've ever written, I've had at least one character who's surprised me. And I've always been afraid that if I did a really rigid, strict outline, that it would take away from the spontaneity of that character coming in and surprising me. Like in this book, it was Molly, the campaign manager from Wyoming. Yeah, I had no clue she was going to show up, And when she did show up, I had no clue what she was going to be. It was going to be like a cameo, and then her role, it's kind of a cliche to say that a character writes themselves, but sometimes it does kind of happen,
Yes, and that is true.
Yeah, they kind of it makes your work day more interesting, right? It does, because all of a sudden you say, okay, this character's, I didn't know she was going to do that type thing.
I think that's one of the joys. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it is, because writing is not joyful.
No.
And,
exactly.
Dorothy Parker said, I hate writing, but I love having written. And I don't hate writing, but I know what she was talking about, You get up in the morning and you have your coffee and that, and you sit down. You don't get up in the morning and say, oh boy, I'm going to write. It's a job. It's a job like any other job. I used to build houses for a living, and I always compare writing a book to building a house. You do a little bit every day, and then after whatever, like with me, it's about 3 months for a first draft. After 3 months, you have a house built.
Yeah, there you go. I think I agree with you on even my editor. She gets after me. She still does, about having, like the index cards and trying to structure what's going to happen. It just doesn't work that way for me. I just write, and then let's go play with it and see what happens. Because the first draft, because then I'll end up going back and then I'll start editing it while I'm trying to write the first draft, which is a problem because then it slows you down. Yeah. What is your favorite part of, like you said, you write, you go, what is your favorite part through the entire book processing? Is it the rough draft, or is it when you go back to try to figure out all 300 and some odd pages and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite?
Yeah, I enjoy editing and rewriting, because if I get the bare bones down, then I kind of know I have it.
Yeah.
And when especially when you get some time between when you finish that first draft, go to the second draft, I find that I can look at something and tell right away whether or not it's working,
Correct.
And one of the things I've noticed over the years is when the writing is going really well and it's really flowing, compared to the days when you're really struggling to get it down and it just doesn't seem to be working and you're kind of sweating blood. I always find when I go back to it that those days when it was going really smooth, it's not as good. And it's the stuff that you really struggle with, to me, that seems to be the better stuff at the end of the day, which is kind of surprising because you think it might be the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing, I had an amazing opportunity to talk to Elmore Leonard once. I was supposed to ask him to blurb my book, All Hat, which I'm wearing a shirt for.
Some technical difficulties. Oh no. Hold on, I think we're having some technical difficulties here. Let's see. Oh, lost him. Okay, guys, it looks like we've lost him here. So if we're going to be able to get him to join back, I'm going to hold on and wait a little bit and see what we can get, if we can get him back on here. So hold on. Okay, we're back.
We are back. I think
We're
we had
back.
a little wind assisted interruption there. Power lines are down or something. I think it's just as windy in Wisconsin as it is in Ontario today, you said.
Yes, we've got it. It's pretty heavy out there. So it's enough to set the dog barking. So
we'll try this again.
All
As
right.
I was saying, I had an opportunity to talk to Elmore Leonard about process. And I said to him, when I'm writing a first draft, I write 5 pages a day. And he says, yeah, I write 5 pages a day. But then he said that the following day, he edits those 5 pages. Whereas I had always written a first draft, start to finish, and then put it away and not look at it for a month or two. And he said that he would edit those 5 pages the next day. So I started doing that. And I was surprised to find out that it would take me an hour or an hour and a half to edit 5 pages, which seems hard to believe when you had just written them 24 hours earlier. But that's what I started doing. This was about 15 years ago. And since then, it makes a really, really good first draft. It's almost like a second draft. Wow. And so that leads me into the editing process a little easier. So that's something you can try, or you can tell the other writers to try, because it really seems to make a difference, you know.
Wow, I'm definitely going to try that. That's neat to know. I never thought of it that way.
So I had this great conversation with him, and then I never did ask him for a blurb because he was being so gracious and kind to me that I didn't feel like I was, how to take advantage of him or anything. So we talked about baseball more than we talked about writing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least you had something else in common. Yes.
Yeah. Well, except he was a Tigers fan. I'm a Yankee fan. But other than that,
well, I want to try to keep this going as long as we can. I also I'm appreciating Brad's time. I do want to get in real quick. His bio again. You can get. I'm going to link his author Facebook author page, and you can find his books at bradsmithbooks.com. Correct? All right. Okay. So for any of you who are just learning about Brad Smith, which shouldn't be, he is an internationally acclaimed novelist and screenwriter. And at this point, I think we're at 12, 13 novels. Where are we at, Brad?
the Goliath Run was 13. So
13.
14 is coming next fall.
All right. Okay. So some of his novels include The Return of Kid Cooper. He was also the winner of the 2019 Spur Award from the Western Writers of America. One-Eyed Jacks is another book. It was shortlisted for the Dashiell Hammett Award. And All Hat, which he has on right there on his shirt. Gotta love that. It was adapted to a feature film. So, you've been one busy guy. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, it actually premiered at the Toronto Film Festival in '07. And I wrote the screenplay, the adaptation as well.
Wow, that is so neat. So, as I told you, he lives in the beautiful country of Canada, and his books are awesome. They are a must read. So if you haven't, go to his website, go buy his book. His books are available all over. So this is such an honor to have you here, and for you to share the process, and for us to talk about the beautiful, well-written book, The Goliath Run. This is, again, I'm showing this because I think this might be one of my favorites of his books. So, Brad, do you have anything else to say or that you'd like to do before we go?
No, I think you covered things very well. I'm glad you liked the book so much. I'm sure you know, it's always nice to find a reader who really gets what you're trying to do. And yeah, I'm glad that you appreciate what I was trying to do with this one.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right.
We tiptoed through the power outages and
yes,
go on the other side.
And it all turned out in the end.
Yes.
So I am going to savor this. I've got this podcast. So my listeners, I'll be putting it up here in the next 24 hours or so. So I want to say, Brad, thank you for everything. Thank you for talking about this powerful book, sharing it, and I'm glad that you fought for it again to get it out there. So you're a wonderful writer. Please keep writing, and I can't wait for your next one to come out.
Well, thanks, Marguerite. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate it.
All right. So you've reached us here on our Criminal Lines, Pages from the Life of a Crime Writer. This is Marguerite Ashton and Brad Smith. We'll get together again soon.